May 1940. The German army sweeps across Belgium and northern France with terrifying speed. German tanks break through Ardennes, aircraft darken the skies, and millions of civilians flee south with carts and suitcases. The French army, considered by many to be the strongest in Europe, crumbles in weeks. Within a short time the French Third Republic collapses and surrenders to Nazi Germany. In this disaster some voices demand that France fights on from its colonies, while others cling to the hope of an armistice with Nazi Germany. Among the confusion, one journalist and lawyer make his choice with striking clarity. He does not hesitate or waver. He argues that resistance is useless, that Germany's triumph is permanent, and that the only path left is to collaborate with the Nazi conqueror. While many Frenchmen prepare for occupation with fear or shame of defeat, he sees an opportunity for influence and prestige. He declares that collaboration with Hitler is not only necessary but patriotic, and he soon becomes the willing voice of the occupiers in Paris. His name is Fernand de Brinon. Fernand de Brinon was born on the 26th of August, 1885 in Laval, in southwestern France. He grew up in a prosperous noble family that valued education, civil duty, and public life. His father, Robert de Brinon, worked in business and local administration, while his mother Jean Messier de Lacombe devoted herself to raising Fernand and his three sisters. From childhood, de Brinon absorbed the sense that France's educated elite had a responsibility to guide national affairs. He excelled in school, showing intelligence and a gift for language. His early teachers noted his curiosity about politics and his ability to argue and discuss various topics with confidence. After completing his secondary studies, he went on to study law and political science, earning qualifications that prepared him both for journalism and for a later role in a public. In the years before the First World War, de Brinon made his name as a journalist and legal advisor. His articles were admired for their polished style and thoughtful commentary. He moved easily in Parisian circles of politics and literature, meeting writers, politicians, and intellectuals who debated France's future. When the First World War broke out in the summer of 1914, he served in the French army and was wounded in combat. His injury gave him a sense of having sacrificed himself for the nation, and he later referred to this experience when justifying his choices. To him, the war proved that survival required discipline, sacrifice, and realism. After the armistice of 1918 and end of the First World War, de Brinon returned to journalism. He worked for leading newspapers and periodicals, where he developed a reputation as a commentator on political and international affairs. By the 1920s he was well known in Parisian media circles. He cultivated friendships among conservative politicians and thinkers who were worried about the future of the French Republic. France had suffered greatly in the First World War, and the Republican political system seemed unstable. Parliamentary life was often chaotic, with short-lived governments and heated debates between left and right of the political spectrum. De Brinon, like many conservatives, believed that the system was too weak to deal with new dangers. He watched with alarm as the French Communist Party grew in strength and influence. He also feared what he saw as a decline in traditional values, respect for authority, and social order. At the same time, de Brinon began to look across the Rhine. He admired Germany's recovery from the chaos of the 1920s and believed that cooperation between France and Germany could stabilize Europe. He started to admire Nazi movement and Adolf Hitler. On the 9th of September, 1933, through the mediation of his friend and future Nazi Minister of Foreign Affairs, Joachim von Ribbentrop, de Brinon became the first French journalist ever to be received by Adolf Hitler for an interview, the content of which he reported in an article in Le Matin that attracted widespread attention in France. In the early 1930s, de Brinon also founded the French-German Committee, which existed until 1940. Its aim was to deepen intellectual exchange with Germany in both scientific and political fields. And de Brinon served as its vice president. In 1934 he married Jean-Louise Rachel Frank. Born to a family of Jewish bankers in Paris, she was an inveterate socialite. As Europe moved toward war again, de Brinon convinced himself that France was too divided and too poorly prepared to win. He argued that communism posed the greatest danger, greater even than Hitler and Nazi Germany. His role of traitor began even before the start of the Second World War. During the Munich conference in September 1938, de Brinon sent information about the discussions of the French cabinet to the German government. When Germany started the Second World War by invading Poland on the 1st of September, 1939, and France declared war on Germany a few days later, he still believed that negotiation might bring peace. To him, fighting Germany was a tragic mistake that would only weaken France further. The German invasion of May 1940 against France and the countries of Benelux shattered them with breathtaking speed. The French army collapsed in weeks, millions of civilians fled south in panic, and the government lost control. De Brinon concluded that further resistance was hopeless. He turned his support to the aged Marshal Philippe Pétain, who seemed the only leader capable of salvaging something from disaster. When the armistice with Germany was signed on the 22nd of June, 1940, de Brinon saw collaboration as the only realistic path. He argued that if France cooperated, it could retain autonomy and shield its people from the harshest aspects of Nazi occupation. De Brinon quickly became one of the most visible advocates of this policy. Unlike Pétain, who governed from Vichy, he remained in Paris, where the German military administration on French territory was based. In September 1940 he was appointed Vichy's official representative to the German authorities in the former French capital. This made him the key civilian link between the occupiers and French collaborationist circles. In this role, de Brinon worked closely with Otto Abetz, the German ambassador to France, and other senior Nazi officials. He took part in negotiations over economic resources, censorship of the press, and the suppression of political opposition. He spoke frequently on the radio and in newspapers, urging the French to accept Pétain's policies and to recognize the new balance of power in Europe. For de Brinon, propaganda was not just duty but conviction. He increasingly admired Hitler, praising him for uniting Germany and fighting the Soviet Union and Bolshevism. Over time, he came to believe openly in a German-led European order. And his position was strengthened when in 1942, Philippe Pétain, the head of the Vichy regime, gave him the title of Secretary of State. Within the French resistance, de Brinon was regarded as one of the most dangerous collaborators. Underground newspapers mocked him as a mouthpiece of the occupiers. His voice on the radio, urging obedience and calm, became a reminder of how deeply the occupiers had penetrated French political life. For resistance fighters who risked their lives in sabotage or intelligence work, de Brinon was the polished traitor who gave legitimacy to German rule. Censorship, deportations, and propaganda that undermined the spirit of the French nation. De Brinon's collaboration was not just diplomatic. He defended measures that targeted French Jews, explaining them to the French population as necessary to maintain order and win German trust. He also supported the use of French forced labor in German factories, presenting it as a contribution to Europe's future. His willingness to speak these arguments publicly made him hated by many ordinary French people, who saw him as a symbol of betrayal. In his decisions and opinions, he was connected with Pierre Laval, Vichy's most powerful politician, who became Vichy's prime minister in 1942 and deepened collaboration with Nazi Germany further. It was Laval who agreed to supply forced labor to Germany and gave support to the deportation of Jews from France. De Brinon backed him and defended these decisions as unavoidable realities. De Brinon held such importance to the Nazis that he secured a special pass protecting his Jewish-born wife from deportation to a German concentration camp. At that time, they were distanced partly by his wife's inconvenient Jewishness, and also because of de Brinon's long-term affair with his secretary Simone Mitter. In 1943, the Vichy regime with German help formed the Milice, a French paramilitary group dedicated to hunting down the resistance. Though not a member, de Brinon supported its mission and worked with its leaders on propaganda campaigns. His approval of these violent measures confirmed his loyalty to the occupiers and made him an enemy of the Free French, which were fighting for the liberation of their country under the leadership of General Charles de Gaulle. De Brinon was always willing to serve Nazi propaganda. In April 1943 he was invited as president of the Committee of the Legion of French Volunteers Against Bolshevism to visit the exhumation of the bodies of the Polish. Even as the tide of war turned against Germany, de Brinon remained loyal to the collaborationist cause. In the summer of 1944, as Allied troops advanced on Paris, most German authorities and Vichy officials fled east to the German territory. De Brinon went with them, joining the Vichy politicians who regrouped at Sigmaringen Castle in southern Germany. There the Germans established a Vichy government in exile made up of Pétain, Laval, and others. Even in these final months, when German defeat was obvious, de Brinon hoped that the Reich could recover and turn the tide of Allied victories. When American forces approached in the spring of 1945, the Sigmaringen enclave dissolved. De Brinon was arrested by American soldiers on the 8th of May 1945 at the Austrian-Swiss border and transferred to France, where a trial awaited him for his collaborationist activities during the war. On the 6th of March, 1947, de Brinon was convicted of treason and sentenced to death. He showed little remorse, insisting to the end that he had been a realist who had tried to save his country. On the 15th of April, 1947, he was executed by firing squad at the Fort de Montrouge near Paris. When the firing squad ended his life, he was 61 years old.